Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Jim Turner has just walked through the door. There he is. Morning, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for being here. I know Dan Cullen was here. I don't know if he still is, but Gary Muirhead is most definitely here. Says, good morning, guys. I've managed to make it today without any issues. I don't know how you managed it, but that same message came through 3 times. So good morning, good morning, good morning to Gary Muirhead. Good morning to Dan, who was here 5:51 this morning. 5:51. I've only recently discovered there are 2 5:51s in their day. Ken Hatcher has just pitched up as well, and the Welsh weather has gone back to normality. I would suggest it is raining where Ken is. May actually get a bit of rain here as well. Hoping it holds off for a bit because my son is off to play golf in just a moment. And Dan says, yep, still here. Good to see you, Dan. Hope you're fitting well, my friend. Let me just get rid of a thing because that's not how this screen is supposed to look. Let's get rid of that. I think we all know by now who the hell I am. A couple of things. First of all, a little bird tells me that the boss of the Worthing Advertiser, those of you that watch this show on a regular basis will know precisely who I'm talking about, apparently up before the beak today. Listen, not for me to comment, but I do hope that the judge had a terrible night's sleep and possibly a row with his wife before he left for work. Hope he's in an absolutely foul mood this morning. On the more positive side of things, I can tell you, Demi Lition's back. Demi Lition is back. At the end of the show, but she's back. Now, just to be absolutely clear, for those of you that don't watch, I'm just going to say good morning to Nigel Williams. Morning, Nigel. Good morning, one and all. Thank you very much indeed for being here, Nigel. Yes, so Demi Lition, I'm way ahead of my time. Way ahead of my time. Listen, pushing the envelope I am. Must be 3 years ago now. We created an AI avatar who I'm fairly sure it was Chris Ford named Demi Lition, which I think is a fantastic play on words. So we had an AI avatar who would read bits of the news that, frankly, I couldn't be bothered to do. And we used an AI avatar for a while, and it went away. And then we used an updated one, and that went away. And we used another one, and that went away. Well, we're back for a 4th time. The reason that she went away last time was basically that the platform I was using to produce the AI avatar was basically charging me 30 quid a month for something that I was using about once every 6 weeks. It seemed a bit excessive, so I did away with it. I've now got access. Well, I can now do it basically free of charge because it's on a platform I'm already paying for. And those of you that have been here even longer might even remember Reg. Do you remember Reg, the robot? Yeah, predated our friend Demi Lition by about a year or so. But yeah. Now, Ken Hatcher says, is she going to Plantworks? When you see the new look Demi Lition, you'll wish she was. If I could figure out how to make that happen, I would do that. Listen, there's a long time between now and September. You never know. I'll see what I can do. And Marky Mark Whiting has just arrived, which means that basically gives me permission to start the show. Marky Mark Whiting is a bit like the flag that says go, and I'm about to go. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. It is Tuesday, the 15th of July. Good morning. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, rather. In today's show, Magni goes full power. Versatile Volvo in Vermont. Try saying that with somebody else's teeth in. Bobcat's new mini excavators in action, and we are marking the launch of the new Caterpillar 980 GC wheel loader with the return, the long-awaited return, the long-overdue return of Ms. Demi Lition. Plus, in my morning monologue today, we're talking about forgotten contributions. That's what we're doing. Hop over to the chat. Ken Hatcher says he's thinking about going to Plantworks on the Wednesday. Is anybody else going to be there on the Wednesday? Speak now or, well, speak later, but forever hold your peace. Everhard have just joined us over on Instagram. Fantastic company over in Switzerland. Been there a long while ago, but been there. Yes, I just need to remind you of today's question of the day, and then we can get on with the show. So it looks like this. Yeah, our question of the day today, and I'll come back to you on your other question, Gary, in just a moment. Our question of the day today comes once again from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead. And his question is this: who do you look up to and why? Now, I must admit, I kind of find that quite a difficult question. Now, my answer, in years gone by would have always been my dad, but he's no longer here. So, I mean, I kind of look up to aspects of some people in the industry. I mean, Stefano Panzeri for just his passion and generosity, I guess. Marco Lorini for his creativity. John Woodward for his dedication to demolition. Dr. Terry Cornby for his unstinting efforts in, making the industry better. But what about you? Who do you look up to in the industry or elsewhere? Who do you look up to and why? Let us know in the chat. Now, Ender Lee says, to be honest, your English is very good. I would hope so. What with me being English and all. Yeah. Now, Gary Muirhead, going back to all things Demi Lition, does the new one come in stockings and suspenders? Well, so there's two answers to that. The first answer is I don't know because I've only ever seen her top half. And the other part of the question is she now comes in leather. That's the kind of thing you're into. Stick around. She'll be along forthwith. Dan Cullen says he's going to be at Plant Works for the week. So Dan, Ken, there's an opportunity for a get-together there as well. Looking forward to catching up with you guys at some point in the not-too-distant future. Now, it is time to crack on with the show. So let us begin with a smidgen of this, and then we're going to be talking telescopic handles. Yeah, telehandlers. We are talking Italian telehandlers, actually. We're talking Magni, and they've now added what they describe as a full power mode to their machines. And this is what it looks like, and this is how it works.
Today we are introducing a new feature that will completely change the way you operate with your Magni RTH, the full power mode. By activating the full power mode, it is now possible to lock the boom extension at the desired height, obtaining an optimized load shot. If you try to lift a suspender load with a classic telehandler boom extension, the machine will have the limit imposed by the dynamic effect of this tension. Locking the extension, the machine is free to use its full lifting power. This allows the machine to reach greater distances while maintaining maximum stability and control. Full power mode. Unleash your true potential.
So there you are, full power mode from the fine folks at Magni. Good morning to them, or buongiorno, should I say. Dan Cullen, going back to our question of the day, which is who do you look up to and why? He says quite a few people. He then says, me. Okay, Nigel, Gary, Jim, all of us here bring something different to the industry and to the table. I'm glad to hear it. Now, Gary says this, don't mention Dr. Terry or I'll be asking for an interview. I have dropped the ball on that one. I have to be honest. I don't want to be one of those guys that makes false promises, but today's show is number 967 of this format, and obviously show number 1000. Who would have thought we'd have got to 10 shows, let alone 1000? But yeah, show number 1000 is going to fall around about the middle of September. I've already got a friend of mine working on a new theme tune for the show to start with. Fred will be working on some new graphics for like the intro and the news section and everything else. So we are going to have a rebrand. One of the things that I'm looking forward to, I don't know if you know, but I tend to do these things in an analog form. That's a big old notebook there. I am planning to take that with me on my cruise because one, I'm not having to think about putting together tomorrow's show or what I'm going to write about next in my morning monologue. I'm planning to spend a bit of time thinking about precisely where this show needs to go. So I'm looking at upping our game. This show will remain largely unchanged, but I am very conscious of the fact that I'm now devoting a little bit too much of my time in an afternoon to writing tomorrow's show and that kind of thing. What I want to do is try and condense that so that we can start to produce some more content. And a lot of that content, I think, is likely to be interview-based. So interviewing, notable and interesting and fascinating people, including Dr. Terry Quornby. I need to kind of redesign how my day works a bit. I mean, the bit that you don't see, I will finish this show, chop it up into its constituent parts, put it out on all the various social media platforms, and then I sit down to write the morning monologue for tomorrow, which is fine, but it does mean that I end up filling my day with a show that basically takes an hour and a half, which I think needs to stop. So, yes, we are looking at doing some more of that. So keep an eye on all of that. We will be telling you more in the fullness of time. Ken Hatcher says, do the 1000th show live from Plantworks. Hold that thought. As it stands today, not even sure if I'm going, but I'll hold that thought. Question today, Jim Turner says, I look up to loads of people for their various traits, but I don't look to anyone generally. I think that's where I am in life now. Being 60 years old, I'm not entirely sure I'm likely to pick up any astonishing insights at this point. I can't honestly see me taking my life and my manner and everything else in a completely different direction, but I do like to borrow from people. And as I say, recently, I certainly say I look up to Stefano Panzeri over at Despe. Just the way he carries himself, his passion for what he does, and humility. That's the word I'm looking for. I was going to say humbleness, and that's not a word. Humility. When we were doing the EDA tour of Italy, everywhere we went, the managing director or the owner of Trevi Beni or Mantovani Beni or VTN or whatever would stand up and give a speech, and they'd welcome the delegates, but they would also welcome the outgoing EDA president, Stefano Panzeri. And every single time they did that, he managed to deflect any praise that he received onto somebody else. The organisers of the event, his fellow board members at the EDA, I wouldn't even say it was a case that he finds praise and plaudits uncomfortable. It's just, that's not me. I recognise that everything I do is part of a team effort. I have to say, I greatly admire that about him. Gary Muirhead says, the Magni telehandler doesn't seem to have been embraced in the UK like other brands have. There's a few about. There is a few about. I'm not entirely sure who the dealer for or the importer is here in the UK. Ken Hatcher says, you're not going to Plantworks with a shocked face. I don't know as it stands at the moment. It's kind of in the lap of the gods a bit. I'll let you know. It's the easy answer. I actually don't know. I don't know if I'm going at all. So I'll watch this space. It'll all come out in the wash, I'm sure. What do we got next? I know. We're off to Vermont with Volvo in just a moment after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, this gave me an opportunity for some wonderful alliteration. So we are going to see a versatile Volvo in Vermont, and whoever decided that Volvo was going to Vermont, thank you for that, because that made my headline writing very, very easy. Here we go.
If you invest in this technology, you are investing in production, you're investing in accuracy, and you're investing in no callbacks. My name is Harold Lunny. I'm the owner of Harold's Concrete and Excavation. We do complete site work for concrete and excavation as well as septic. We are in Newark, Vermont, and the backdrop is Burke Mountain. And what we're doing here today is we're starting a new house project. As far as the technology, I have had Volvo around pretty much ever since they came into the States, and I've watched them provide different functions that no other competitor did. I bought my first machine from Wood CRW in approximately 2018. The sales team over there has been phenomenal, and the Wood service department has worked really, really hard to make this happen. So on this particular project here, it's a 4-cornered foundation with a box off the side. It will have actually 5 corners, and in the Dig Assist, it will take me probably less than 2 minutes to put this in there. Dig Assist is designed for the residential market, where we're doing just a typical 4-cornered foundation, or I mean, that's programmable up to 16 to 20 corners. I've never seen a limit on the amount of corners we can put in. I've eliminated having someone at the office to create that file, so I'm doing it on site. The Copilot is very user-friendly. It's designed for the layman, and it's designed for easy to backtrack if you do make a mistake, putting in your data and work with it. You have X, Y, and Z coordinates for elevation and locations at every bucket you take, so that you're never doing an overdig, wasting time, or moving unnecessary materials. The Dig Assist is accurate to within about the size of your thumbnail as far as locations, and for elevations, it's less than a half an inch with no labor in the hole. So from a safety point of view, it's huge because you're never looking for that person in the hole. It's just the machine and you. This system here has been a game changer. It sets me up. It takes very little time to work with. And it actually, I mean, you don't have to pull out any tape rules or anything anymore. You know 2 points on this site and you're going. And it takes me less than 5 minutes to establish those points, my layout, and we're done and we're moving dirt. And that's what this game is all about, is how much dirt that machine will move. In my opinion, it took me approximately a week to learn this system, whereas if I had a laborer out here, it would take probably up to 3 to 5 years to train that laborer. I would rather invest in myself and learn this machine and this technology to streamline my business and then make that machine much more effective. If you take a job like this and it typically takes between an hour to 3 hours to lay out, and that machine has a core value of $250 an hour, and you have a laborer that's costing you $75, that's $325 an hour that you've wasted with tape measures, grade stakes, and paint. That machine has circumvented all of that through the whole dig. So time is money, and Volvo has got the system to help you make money.
So let us begin with the positives, I guess. Ken Hatcher starts by saying he likes his Volvo. He certainly seemed to. Dan says, wow, that looks an awesome place for a house. Yeah, imagine living in Vermont, middle of nowhere. That would be absolutely fantastic. Jim says, looks bloody lovely out there. And Dan also says, think of the peace and quiet. Yeah, think of the peace and quiet. And very interesting concept. But Ken Hatcher, eagle-eyed Ken Hatcher, never, ever fails to spot it. He says, Volvo man digging over his sprockets, and then lots of angry faces. He was. Ken says, wow, can I have a labourer job with him? £75? Nice, he says. Yeah, I'd listen. I've never been to Vermont, but it is on the bucket list, along with basically all of Canada and various other places as well. Where are we going next? I know where we're going. Yesterday, we gave you a bit of a walk around of the latest Bobcat mini excavators. In just a moment, I want to show you them in action.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
The return of Demi Lition, the new look Demi Lition, is mere moments away. But before we get to that, I do need to show you this from Bobcat. have to say, very impressed with those. Looks like Bobcat. Let's be honest, fairly typical. They've thought of pretty much everything there. What do you think? What do you make of the new Bobcat mini excavators? Love to hear from you. She's back in just a moment. Demi Lition is standing, waiting in the wings, new leather jacket. Back after this. So here's how this all came about. Had a press release coming from Caterpillar yesterday to say that they've launched their new Cat 980 GC wheel loader. They sent me a press release, which is a bunch of words, plus about half a dozen photographs. And I thought, well, I could sit here and read that to you. Be a bit boring, not much to look at. Or I could do it in a different way. And I decided to do it in a different way. So I got on the imaginary telephone and I phoned up Demi Lition and I said, "Here, Demi, what are you up to tomorrow?" She said, "Not much." I said, "Do you fancy talking about wheel loaders?" She said, "I'd love to." And so she did. And here she is, the return of Demi Lition.
Caterpillar has added a new model to its range of medium wheel loaders. The new Cat 980 GC is powered by a Cat C13 diesel engine that drives through an automatic planetary power shift transmission, offering 4 forward and reverse speeds, and a maximum travel speed of almost 40 kilometers per hour. The new machine is offered with a bucket capacity range of 4.3 to 5.8 cubic meters. The new model can also be equipped with the Cat Fusion Quick Coupler and controls. Cat Vision Link comes as standard on the new Cat 980 GC, allowing fleet managers to track critical operating parameters like machine location, hours, fuel usage, diagnostic codes, and idle time to improve productivity and lower operating costs. Also optionally available, Cat Payload weighs material while moving to the truck and lifting for on-the-go weighing so the operator can load to exact specification, load more trucks, and avoid over- or underloading. The new Cat machine has an operating weight of almost 30 tons and provides a dump clearance of almost 3.2 meters.
Have to say, she's good, isn't she? Chris Ford arrived just as Demi Lition was leaving. Chris Ford arrived. Good morning, Chris. How are you doing, my friend? Ken Hatcher says she knows her stuff. Yeah, mainly because I told her. But yes, Ken had. What have we got? Yeah, there's Ken as well. Hurry up, Debbie. Hurry up, Demi Delicious. I've got to go back to work. Well, I hope you weren't disappointed. There you are. That is the new look Demi Lition. Hope you enjoyed that. She will be back at some point in the not too distant future. Now that I've got that capability again, yes, I will be using it from time to time. See if we can have some fun with that. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back immediately after. I am going to be using an extended football analogy to begin with. I know that's not everyone's FA cup of tea. See what I did there? But please humour me. I do know where I'm going with this. The metaphor does make sense, and I do have a point to make. I'd like you to imagine that you're a football player. You're good, very good, in fact. And that's why you're playing in the English Premier League for a well-respected team. For the sake of this story, let's say you're a midfield player with Nottingham Forest. As a player, you train 4 and 5 times a week. You play competitive matches on a Saturday or a Sunday, and often on a Tuesday or a Wednesday too. Football is your life, the thing you always wanted to do. And while your career is the realization of a childhood dream, there have been a lot of sacrifices along the way, sacrifices that got you to where you are today. When you were younger, while all your friends were out partying and drinking, you stayed in. You didn't drink, you didn't smoke, and you didn't experiment with drugs of any kind, because football came first. When all your friends got girlfriends, you didn't. You could never spare the time. On the rare occasions that you did get a girlfriend, the relationship was pretty much over before it even began, just as soon as she realised that football came first, second, and third in your life. There's been no trips to fancy restaurants for you. You've been on a nutrition-rich diet for the past 12 years. Along the way, you've had numerous operations to patch you up after injuries, some minor, some a little bit more serious. Yes, you've been rewarded handsomely along the way. You have the nice house and the fancy car, but you've given everything to football in general and to your club in particular. And your team is involved in the FA Cup competition. It's a season highlight, a very real shot at a cup final medal for your own personal trophy cabinet. You make it through the third round and you have a really good game. In fact, so good, you're named man of the match. You score 2 goals in the fourth round to secure your team's place in the fifth round. You make a couple of crucial tackles in that game, and while it's close, you're now in the quarterfinals. That quarterfinal match is tight. In fact, it goes to penalties, but you score the winning penalty that takes your team into a semi-final showdown with one of your biggest rivals. That semi-final is the toughest game of the entire season. Both teams are desperate to secure their place in the Wembley final, so it's a cagey affair. And things aren't helped by the fact that you're experiencing some pain in your ankle. It's been a long, hard season and you're no longer quite at peak fitness. But you do your best. You work as hard as your body will allow. Your team wins and it books its place in a Wembley final. Now, you will admit that the semi-final game was not your best, but no one could question your work ethic or your work rate. So you're a little surprised when the manager calls you to his office 2 weeks before the FA Cup final. He tells you that not only are you not picked for the final, you're officially up for sale. Despite your hard work, commitment and dedication and the part you played in getting your team to the final, your services are no longer required. So when that cup final rolls around, you're watching it on TV. While there's part of you that will be forever Nottingham Forest, you're not even sure who you want to win. You've been discarded, cast aside, and now you're just a bystander. You're not even watching from the touchline, you're watching it from the sofa. Last month, the S&P Global UK Construction reported that the UK construction industry had experienced its highest level of job shedding since August 2020, the very height of the COVID-19 pandemic and the middle of the first national lockdown. Industry employment levels fell at the fastest rate for 5 years, and amid a lack of new work in the sector's pipeline, many companies reported that they were reluctant to backfill existing vacancies. Now, we all know how demolition and construction works. It's a team effort with dozens or even hundreds of people involved in bringing a project to fruition. In fact, there could be that many people involved in actually securing the project in the first place. There's the people that prepare the bid, the people that do the planning and logistics, the people that organise the men and the machines. But it runs deeper than that. In all likelihood, a company will secure a new project based, at least in part, on its previous experience. If you've won the job to demolish a 20-storey tower block because you did a very similar job just a few months ago, then directly or indirectly, everyone involved on that previous tower block has made a contribution to the winning of this new job. In fact, much like our FA Cup analogy, there's every possibility that there are certain individuals whose hard work, dedication, expertise, passion, commitment and experience are the very reason a company has secured this exciting new project. But also, like that football analogy, there is also a possibility that those people will not be taking place in the final, that they too will be watching from the sofa while others enjoy the glory. Sometime between your efforts getting your team across the finish line on that previous job and the winning of this new one, you've been let go. Someone on high has decreed that your services are surplus to requirements. So now, while your former team make ready for this next big challenge, you're sat by the phone, hoping and praying that another team comes in for you, one that recognises your skills and your talent. Of course, this is the nature of modern business. In the sphere of demolition and construction, much like in professional football, the one-club man is a rarity. It's true also that individual workers will leave their employer for the promise of a pay increase, a promotion, or a better company car. So this is unquestionably a sword that cuts both ways. That knowledge makes it no less uncomfortable to be sat on the sidelines while your team prepares to do battle once again. Of course, all of this comes down to the wishes of the manager or the management. Whether it's football, demolition, or construction, they will pick the team they believe to be the best. Your former team might do an incredible job. Your former teammates might get all the plaudits. Yet despite your invaluable contribution, you won't even get a mention in the footnotes. There you are. A meandering way of saying, if you've been made redundant, just imagine that you've been made redundant by a company who have just won a new project, and you're sat there thinking, that would be right up my street. That's precisely the sort of job that I enjoy working on, precisely the sort of job I could bring real value to. But somebody on high in your company has decided, nah, you can head off down the road. That was the purpose of today's morning monologue. What do we got in the chat? Dan Cullen, enjoying Demi Lition. Wow, she looks pretty like a woman of any man's dreams. Yeah, well, if you're into blondes in leather, I guess. And who of us isn't? Yeah, no. Do you know, I actually toyed with the idea of making Demi Lition. I mean, the name wouldn't work particularly well. I actually toyed with the idea of making her male, purely to bring the changes and to prove that I'm not a vile sexist. But when I looked at the avatars that were available to me, I thought, no, she looks the part. She looks like she could get by on a demolition site without too much trouble. So yeah, Demi Lition is reborn as of today. Going back to those figures, I'm sure Dan will back me on this, because Dan obviously has got his finger on the pulse with all the people on his various WhatsApp groups that are seeking work. Think about that. We have come through COVID slowly, painfully, and it was not easy, but we made it through. We made it through Brexit and all that went through with that. We've now taken on a new government who have now been in power for, what is it, a year? And we are losing construction workers at the fastest rate since the very height of the COVID-19 pandemic, August 2020. So, I mean, if you cast your mind back, August 2020, I mean, COVID officially hit, I think we went into lockdown around about March that year. But I think we started to understand the real depths and breadth of the COVID problem. So by the time August rolled around, I think a lot of companies had decided we literally cannot carry on with the workforce we've got. We're going to lay people off. Some companies just packed up and never came back again. So yeah, we are now losing construction workers at the fastest rate since the very height of COVID. What does that tell you about the state of the UK construction and demolition nation? And particularly given, I'm not going to dwell on, the Labour Party and its 1.5 million new homes, but, 1.5 million new homes. We've got Angela Rayner saying that she's going to pluck 100,000 new workers out of thin air, and we are losing them faster than we have in the past 5 years. Makes you wonder. At this point, it's not even a case of topping up that which we've already got. It's more a case of replacing that which we've already lost. I think that's more a case that we're looking at. Chris Ford says graveyards are full of indispensable people. True enough. Yeah, very, very true. I used to, when I worked in publishing, there was a guy called John Hallam, who was, I think he was like a publishing director. Doesn't really matter, but he was no. Sorry, John, if you're still around and still listening. He was known as Dr. Death. Dr. Death. So he would move from one division of my old employer to another. So we had, in our division, it was originally Caterer and Hotel Keeper and the Chef magazine. And then when I moved over, it was Contract Journal, International Construction, Plant Managers Journal. We were all in little divisions. The thing that everybody dreaded was the arrival of the newly appointed publishing director, John Hallam, because John Hallam would arrive and you will know him by the trail of dead, because basically he would arrive and within about a fortnight, the layoffs would begin. Not entirely convinced he ever actually strengthened a publishing team or a magazine, but that's what he did. His job was to cut costs and so on down the line. We've got that in demolition and construction now. We've got to the point where There are people that are employed purely to cut costs. And yes, you might go for a lower fuel consumption excavator. You might make sure that all of your guys travel together rather than everybody having their own individual vans. Maybe you ensure that, 4 travel in a van together post-COVID. We don't have to worry about social distancing anymore. And maybe you can do things like that. But ultimately, what it will come down to is shedding jobs. And that is precisely what is going on right now. We're shedding jobs at the fastest rate since the height of COVID. And if there is an upturn, if the industry were to wake up tomorrow and say, you know what, this Keir Starmer, I think he's got a point. We could feasibly build 1.5 million new homes between now and 2030. How? As I say, we're at the point now where we're not topping up what we've already got. We're replacing what we've already lost, but slower than we're losing it. That's where we are today. And what is the end game for that? If you cast your mind forward to 2030, for example, you cast your mind forward to 2030. If we continue to lose construction and demolition workers at the rate that we're currently doing, the CITB predicted that we would need an additional 250,000 by 2028. What will that be if we continue losing people at the rate we are now? Will it be 300,000? 400? Will it be 500,000? And what does that do to our ability to build homes, build schools, build hospitals, and to maintain that which we already have? Who's going to take care of our roads? Who's going to take care of our hospitals and our schools? Who's going to build the houses and everything else that construction contributes? Seriously, we've been talking about a skill shortage, or I've been writing about a skill shortage for more than 30 years now. It is a skills crisis. I do genuinely believe it's a skills crisis. But if we are now losing people at a much faster rate than we're attracting them, that crisis has just become a catastrophe. And that's where we are at the moment. Now, that S&P report is published. I think it's every month. It may be every other month. I can't actually remember. I'll be watching that with interest, and I will be bringing you the updates on that. But think about the implications of that. We're talking about topping up the funnel we talk about it here on a regular basis, topping up that funnel, bringing new people in, bringing young people in. But the people that are leaving the industry through their own personal choice, through frustration with the industry, through retirement, through injury, and so on down the line, we are losing them at an alarming rate. And I keep coming back to this. Good morning, Garvin, who's just joined us over on Instagram. I keep coming back to this, but if you go away from the show with anything lodged in your head, think of this. We as a nation in 2020 were plunged into a once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully, pandemic. We didn't know what the outcome would be. We didn't, by the time August 2020 rolled around, I don't think we actually knew whether we would ever be able to go back to our regular working lives, our regular lives, not just work, but our regular lives. We'd experienced lockdown, and that lockdown went on and on and on. If you remember rightly, I think we ended up with things being eased a little so that everybody could enjoy their Christmas. I think that was 2020. So we had no real notion of, how life would pan out or how work would pan out. And we, as a result of that, as a direct result of COVID and all that went with it, were shedding jobs at a fairly alarming rate in August 2020. We're now back at that level. And we should be post-Brexit. There is no COVID to blame. It is just a nature of the beast. And I always come back to this one thing that plays on my mind. If you are not even a conspiracy theorist, but if you are a genuine realist, if you're running a construction company right now would be a pretty good time to really, really, really focus on autonomy. You know, if we're losing workers at a pandemic level, at a pandemic rate, you still got houses to build, office blocks to build, roads to pave, and so on down the line. It's becoming increasingly clear that we will not have enough people to do all of that. Now, are you going to sit on the sidelines and hope and pray that your company doesn't fold through the lack of workers, or are you going to take action and try to set a different course that may involve fewer and fewer people, autonomy, remote control, and that kind of thing? Now would be the time. And I hate to say it, but also think about the maths here. We've got this ambition to build 1.5 million new homes in the next 4 or 5 years. You would think that people would be queuing at the door to be part of that potential boom in house building, but they're not. The companies might be, the house builders might be, but the actual workers, the people that will lay the bricks and dig the foundations and do the plastering and the painting and the decorating and run the electrics and the plumbing and everything else, where are they? Quite clearly, they're not coming in, they're going out. They're going out the exit faster than they're coming in through the front door. Makes me concerned for the future of this industry as we know it. You know, I mentioned 2030, but if you remember rightly, I wrote a book called Demolition 2051, good 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years ago, where I was predicting the rise of autonomy and remote controls and remote monitoring and all that kind of thing. And it was a work of fiction. It was a little bit sentimental and so on down the line. But I was thinking, you know, maybe we will actually have sites that are partly or fully autonomous by then. It was a work of fiction, and at the time I was thinking, I based it all in reality. You know, these are things that could happen, possibly. The more you look at the background now, the bit that I didn't foresee in that book was the fact that we might need that autonomy a whole lot sooner than 2051 through the lack of people. And listen, you know, I think we're only partly to blame. I think the education system, we talk about this a lot, the education system has failed to deliver the people that we need. I think it's failed to highlight the benefits and the necessity of jobs in the trades and vocational skills and all that kind of thing. I think that's part of it. But I think we also have ourselves to blame. And I do think it's one of those things that, you know, like when a famous person, you know, like a famous musician dies and everybody suddenly wakes up to the fact, shit, I didn't appreciate them when they were here. And now I've just realized how good, I don't know, John Lennon. I didn't realize just how good John Lennon was, or George Harrison, or Elvis Presley, or, you know, choose your poison. I wonder if we will have exactly the same thing with construction, where we'll wake up one day unable to work at the rate that is required and just look at ourselves and go, we didn't do what we should have done. That's my concern. You 254 over on Instagram just said, hello, sir. Hello to you as well. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Dan Cullen says, this industry is all fucked up and no one cares. Too many take the piss, too many on drugs and alcohol. I think there's a lot of that. There's a little bit of me, and I am, I'll be the first to admit, I am a little anti-authority at times. There's a little bit of me that thinks maybe this is, the industry is about to get precisely what it deserves. When you think about how the demolition companies and those that run them have treated people over the years, you know, the conditions they've expected people to work under, the physical stress and strain they've put them under, the mental stress and strain they've put them under, the fact that they have offered them no job security and no financial security, the fact that a lot of people were pushed off the books and out into self-employment. It's almost like that is all now coming home to roost. And it will be an interesting conversation to be had if you're a tier 1 contractor who has done all of that. You've really put your workers through the ringer, and you have to go to a shareholders meeting to say, well, we've won all this work, but we can't actually do it because we don't have enough people. I wonder if the shareholders will look at that and say, well, you kind of brought that upon yourselves, didn't you? If you had been a little more fair, a little more kind, a little more understanding, a little more generous, perhaps, maybe you wouldn't be up shit creek now. Jim Turner says, right now it's a perfect time to supply a house with a job for a few reasons. Folk don't jack a job in it. Folk don't jack a job in if it means they instantly make themselves homeless. A house is a good investment. It's guaranteed rental income, and you don't pay people as much. Funnily enough, I mean, what is that place up in the Wirral? Port Sunlight. Do you remember? Anyone ever been to Port Sunlight? Back in the day, there was a lot of Unilever factories up that way. And Unilever decided much the same sort of thing. They basically created a town called Port Sunlight, and they housed their workers. Now, I think if you looked at the big print, it probably you probably thought as a worker, what, I get a house to go in my job? How fantastic is that? What they were actually doing, of course, was buying your loyalty, because you're not likely to jack in a job if you're also going to lose your house at the same time. So, Jim, not a new idea, but certainly one that's worked in the past. But I don't think we plan ahead anymore, particularly at political level. A politician is put in charge of roads, for example, or transport, and he knows full well that he'll be in that job for probably the next 4 years, after which somebody else's problem. So you end up with a government is we're going to invest lots in hospitals and schools because it will win us lots of votes. And then the next government comes along, well, we've got new schools and new homes, so we'll invest in roads. But nobody is looking at the big picture. What will we need in 20, 30, 40 years' time? I go back to the Boris Island idea. Say what you like about Boris Johnson, say what you like about that as a project. But it was ambitious, moving a lot of work out of London, moving a lot of construction jobs out of London, but also moving a lot of airline traffic out of London. Makes perfect sense. But we, as a nation or as a government, they looked at it and went, it's too ambitious. The creation of 20, 30, 40,000 jobs, a whole new community away from one of the major conurbations, too ambitious. Is that right? Garvin says these companies will just boost their outsourcing of labour and skills. The recruitment agencies will scale accordingly, and in many cases just send bodies, which is sometimes the case anyway. Nothing solved, but it will just drag the whole thing out even longer. And therein lies the issue. If you are looking at just sending bodies, as Garvin has just described it, I don't know exactly what he's saying. Not only are we struggling to keep up, we're now filling some of our roles with people who shouldn't be there in the first place, aren't qualified, aren't experienced, don't have the knowledge or the grounding, don't have the competence. They've got a card, but they don't have the competence. So our long-term answer to the skill shortage is to go increasingly unskilled. If I were working on a site, if I'm driving a dumper and there's somebody of that nature that's driving the excavator loading my dumper, I think I'd be looking for a job at Sainsbury's. I'm not sure I'd want to be on a site where full well that some people have been employed purely to keep the seat warm. Would you? If you need to speed up autonomous development, you need a good war. A terrible thing, but there's nothing like it for advancing technology. Chris, I think you're absolutely right. I hate to say it, and I know I'm a cynical old sod, but when I was talking to this scientist last week, we were talking about asbestosis and mesothelioma. And what I was saying was, because it's a cause that it kills thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people around the world every single year. What it doesn't have is a figurehead. And I hate the notion of somebody notable or famous and popular dying for a cause. But when you think about AIDS, when Freddie Mercury died of AIDS, and Rock Hudson as well, I think we all looked at it and went, fuck, that really is really. We'd seen the TV adverts and we'd all bought into the condom notion. But I think when Freddie Mercury and Rock Hudson died, it was like a wake up call. When you think about the famous actors that have died because of their smoking habits, you can point at them and say, oh yeah, and even drugs. You think about the 27 Club, the Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, all died from drugs at the age of 20. Jim Morrison, all died because of excessive drugs and everything else. So that we've got a figurehead to look to say, that's what happens when you abuse this. Asbestos doesn't have that. I don't want it to have that, but it can't. Like Chris is saying there about we need a war for advancing technology. Yeah. I do wonder if that is the case. Jim Turner says, I was looking at it from a farm worker point of view, as that's how it used to be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I used to go to Windsor on a fairly regular basis. Used to drive through the Great Park to go to Leverton. And obviously Windsor, back in the day, was an estate, a country estate, for the king or the queen, whoever happened to be in power. But there's loads and loads of little buildings dotted about the place, at gates and out in the out in the wilds, purely because that's where the farm or estate workers were. That's where they lived. You came to work here, and that's where you lived. And as I say, you wouldn't want to lose your house or you wouldn't want to lose your job, because you'd lose your house. So I think you worked probably a lot harder. You were a lot more dedicated and committed. And as a result, you get to keep your house. Yeah, good point. Anyway, people, enough of all that old tosh. I think it's probably time for me to go and do something else. Back tomorrow for yet more of the same. We are at show number 968 tomorrow, which means that tomorrow is, let me think, 1, 2, 3, I think we're 8 shows away from me going off on my hollybobs for a couple of weeks. So make the most of tomorrow, if you will, because we're running out of shows. No idea if Demi Lition will be back. She may be. Well, we will see. But she's clearly popular still, despite the new look and the ever-changing face. I'll be back tomorrow for yet more of the same. I hope you're here as well. Until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. See you all very soon. All the best.